I'm just talking away. Um, Good morning, everybody. Casey, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, there we go. Good. All right. So I can't see how many people are in. Are we getting close to where everybody who signed up?
It's showing currently 4 presenters and 17 attendees. Excuse me.
Okay. Well, I know we had 30 people signed up. I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, you might find that some people are teaming up maybe for the presentation instead of on their own computers. But yeah.
So, good morning, everyone. I don't see a list of people on my. Oh, it's way up here at the top. I see. You and add loading. Okay. A lot of people. All right. So, since those of us who woke up early, not me, but yeah, I tried. We will just jump right in and get this thing going. So, good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, of course, everybody probably should, but just in case, I'm Corey. I'm the owner of the company, and during our user conference, we weren't able to go over the data extractor. So I said I would set up this webinar so we can go over this today and kind of do a little deep dive into it. I know I scheduled this for like 2 hours. A lot of that's going to probably be based on questions and stuff, but I'm going to try to go as slow as I can on some of this stuff, but most of you know I kind of like ramble. So I'm going to try my best not to ramble as much and just kind of jump into how things work. So what I'd like is if you've got questions, please ask your questions in the chat. Just type in a question. Casey will interrupt me when he can, and we'll get to some of those questions. And I am going to. I'm kind of just choosing the city of Enumclaw to kind of do some of our reporting on, mainly just because of the amount of data they have and different types of data that we can look at. So I've got some of it's a little bit older data from before the conference, but there should be enough for us to really kind of get our feet wet and looking at how we can use the data extractor and get stuff out of the system. So I'm going to jump in. Of course, the data extractor is going to be under reports. So when I click on reports, over here on the right-hand side is your data extractor. During the user conference, we talked about the report creator, and that the report creator is those predefined reports. They're already built in the system. We've developed those reports. What data comes out of them is what you get. There's no really changing the data or the you can change what you see, but you're not going to be able to change the columns and the type of data that's exported because they're built into the system. And that doesn't necessarily always help you get what you're looking for. I know that the data extractor itself is good for the fact that you can create and customize your own columns and headers and filters. You're going to get that data out that you want. That's going to be useful for things like your public records requests. You know, somebody that might ask something that's, I need all business licenses that you did, you know, between this time and this time, and I need the phone number and email address of all of those businesses. Report creator is not going to give you like the people information and the details sometimes. Even the report creator is not going to give you any of those custom fields that are on the data screens. You're not going to be able to capture that information in the report creator. So the data extractor is going to allow us to capture more data that's been configured and customized basically for you in your permit system. So the data extractor itself is we define our columns that we want the data to be exported to, and that is then exported to a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. It actually says here it's a CSV file. Well, that's changed a long time ago, and I need to change that label. It actually just exports to Microsoft Excel. So let's jump right into what the data extractor is. You can see here at Enumclaw, I've got a lot of them in here. Excuse me here. So I'm going to start out by just creating a new data extractor. Click on the new. And then the first thing you need to decide when you're doing a data extractor is what data am I looking for? So, and that's going to be based on this extractor type. And so it defaults to permits. So you're looking, this is basically saying you're just looking for just permit records. And I probably should change this label to say like basic permit records. That's going to be like the permit numbers, some of the dates, and so forth. But when we drop that down, we've got different types of extractors. So reviews. So these are going to be the same as permit records, but they're permit records that are related to permit reviews and those review comments. So if you're looking for data that's related to reviews, you're going to try to use this extractor type for reviews. Same thing here for inspections. These are going to be permits and how they are related to their inspections and inspection comments. I can get that data out of there. Conditions, requirements. Then we have the last three are kind of a mix match of the same thing. So permit fees are going to be just permit records and the fees that you're charging for those permits. Nothing to do with any kind of cashier transactions or anything or money that you've taken. These are just permit records related to the fees. But then the second one down, or the next one down, is your cashier transactions. These are going to be your permit records and how they're related to cash transactions. So if you've taken payments, you want to be able to report on those. And of course, the last one is fees/cash transactions. So these are permit records related to the fees and the cashier transactions. So I want to know any of the fee information as well as those cashier transactions. Right now, those are the only extractor types that we have in the system. I know people have asked in the past, and it doesn't come up very often, but saying things like messages and holds, there isn't anything that does that. Even the activity logs or there's other related data that's to permits, but that data isn't directly. That's not something that most people usually report on. They just would like to report on. So once I've chosen my extractor type, I'm just going to choose permits right now. I'm going to give it, I'm going to do AAAA, just so it shows up at the top of my list up here, because I'm lazy today. And I'm going to do test extractor. And then the next thing down here is this a private data extractor? So remember when we talked about the user conference, these little eyes here are little tooltips. So when checked, this data extractor will be private to only you and administrators. So what that means, if I'm not going to check that box, but if I do check it, that means that when I look at this list of extractors, I'm only going to see, I'm going to see all public and my private. But if it's checked as private, nobody else can see it. So, except for administrator who has the ability to see all extractors, all private reports and everything. So I'm going to click update. So what this does when I've created it. So if I just close it right now, you can see up here, I have my test data extractor. So, and it's a permits type, and you can see I haven't run it. And I have the ability to modify all of this information. I can make it private or not, change the description, and then I can also clone it. So sometimes you might have an extractor you've created, but you also want the same kind of data, but maybe a different permeation of that data. So that you can just clone it and have, you know, AAA1 and AAA2. So let's go back into view. So the biggest thing to understand about the data extractor, it's kind of like our reports, the report creator. We are actually going to query the database of every permit in the system. So up here at the top, I've got my buttons here. I can add a new item, and right here you can see I have two, my permit number and my console. So these are automatically created for you when you create a new extractor. I can get rid of both of them if I want to, but you normally want to keep, I kind of feel this is a good place to start. You at least need to start with the permit number, and the console. Usually you're going to want to filter by maybe building, sign, public works, you know, land use, whatever, you know, whatever it is you're trying to get information on, you're usually going to want to filter that. But right now, if I click on view data, the view data is my friend, and it's giving me every, you can see the two columns here, permit number and console, and it's going to give me every permit in the system. So, and I can click on these and pull up the permit and look at them directly from the data extractor. And down at the very bottom, when you scroll to the bottom, you'll see our pages, and you're going to get every page of data of however many records, you know, 100,000 records that are in the database or whatever. You're literally getting every record. So from there, so this next button, view SQL, it's kind of it's there for a lot of it's there for me to help me understand how we're getting that data out of the database. So this is actually the query that, or the SQL statement that we're using to get the data from the database. And we're kind of generating that SQL statement as you add columns and you add filters. So if I go to console here and I click edit and I say BLD, that's my filter. I want my console to equal BLD. I click update. You'll see here now it says console equals BLD. I've now filtered this query to give me the permit number and where I want the console to equal BLD. So if I view the SQL, you'll see now it's added this little where thing, where that console, this console ID is going to equal BLD. So now if I view my data, I'm only seeing BLDs. I'm no longer seeing any other type of permits in the system. That is the key to how this data extractor works. My suggestion is you don't filter until you get the columns you're looking for. So if I come back in here and just get rid of that, update, and then view again, that view SQL, that where clause is gone, I'm going to get every bit of data again in this system. So this one here, export XLS, this allows me to export that data to Excel. And we'll do that in a minute once we kind of got some valid data. So let's add another column here, add item. And in here, when we're adding items, this is how we're going to put another column. And we have 4 different choices up here at the top of different kinds of data that we can add to this data extractor. So we have our standard fields. These standard fields, they're kind of, it says standard permit fields here. And as you scroll down, these are all the permit fields that you have access to. These are the standard right out of the box fields. So I've got applied dates, I can go issued, and I do update. So now that I've done that and I do view data, I now have date issued as a date. So that column is now added to this this extractor. So the next thing maybe I might want to do is come down here to permit fees, update. So now add another item here, and I'm going to do balance due. update, and I can view data. So now you can see I've got my permit fees, there's all the fees, and the balance due over here. So of course, all these are older permits because they're going to be in order by permit number. I can click on these little columns up here and I can sort those. So, and click on it again. And so here are my signs. Here I can see that there's money owing on them. These are going to be the newer ones. And then as you get older. So literally, you want to start out by building your columns. What data do I want? Then you start to filter. A lot of people, I think, try to start filtering as they go. And it's not going to probably be that best of an option. Another thing here is this little output column. There, you can see it's got like these little check boxes and they're turned on. I can click on that and turn it off. When I view data, that column, it's part of maybe my query, but it's not showing up in my export. So the other thing here is like these permit num, date issued. These are going to be the columns that get exported to Excel, and you can change those names as well. So I can come back in here and go, instead of date issued, I can click on edit. And you see here it says header. I can get rid of date issued and say update. This console, I'm going to edit that. I'm going to say BLD is what I want that to be. Another quick tip here is this filter, it knows that I want contains is empty. So I can say I just want anything that's got that column empty. If I could do equals BLD or contains BLD. Contains can make it slower, making the query slower. So just be aware of using the word contains. Sometimes that's a good place to put that in a text field or maybe like a memo field where you're looking for the word fire, where somebody typed fire in a description or something. But it can slow down the queries on the database. So now if I do update, now I'm filtering this. I can look at my SQL here and see where I'm filtering just for BLDs. But if I'm viewing that and I've got BLD over here in that column, well, if I know I'm doing a building data extractor, I don't need that to output. Nobody gives, cares what that is. We already know what they are because it's a building console. So I don't want that to export. So even this total permit fees, those are what we say. You just say fees, I'll put it all capitals and do update. And it's even, I can do things here like greater than, anybody that's got fees greater than, $1,000 or something, I could do whatever I want here to filter that. View that data. Now you can see my column says fees. This allows me to make that report cleaner, nicer. If I'm giving this report to somebody else, that can, make a little more sense to them of what that data is. So the next part that's important to understand is I'm going to pull one of these permits up. When we're on one of these screens over here, all of this data that's on all of these screens are custom. So not every client has the same fields. Not every client has the same field names. These can be different and across from permit to permit, even versions. So there can be versions where we've added new dates or we've changed this drop down to a field where you can type it in. It can change over time. So how to find out what the name is of this field to be able to get it. So this permit type field, it's going to tell us if it's a residential or commercial. If you hover over it, a tooltip will pop up. And what's in parentheses there, that SEL_permit type, that's the name of that field. That data on this building permit, that is what that field is called. So if I come back over here to my data extractor and add item, I now have custom fields. So those custom fields are all of these fields across all of these screens. So if I'm on a plumbing screen, I want that tank field, hover over it. It's num vats tanks. So whatever it is that I want to report on, every field can be different. And it can be different from between a sign permit and a building permit. They might have two fields that, like this permit type, might be named something different. So if I come back over here, I go console. So I need that building permit. Select the field. Well, we got to come down here to SEL. It's going to be in alphabetical. There's that SEL permit type. And I say update. And I say view data. Now I can get residential, commercial, all down the line. That is what is in that drop box. I can even get that subtype if I want, SEL subtype. So add item, custom field, building, SEL subtype, and do update. View data. So this is where, see how we got plumbing, building, mechanical, but this SEL permit type and SEL subtype column names probably aren't going to be useful to anybody. And that's why we can go in here and edit those as we do these. And I can do permit type and subtype. Now when I view that, those columns will say permit type and subtype. So that way, when I export this data out, it's going to make more sense. So I can say permit type, I want equals commercial. So this is going to has to match that. Absolutely has to match. So it needs to find anything that has a permit type commercial. You'll notice now I no longer get residential in my list. But if I misspelled that, if I put one M, update, view data, I get no data back. And then people will usually go into panic mode. It's, you got to look at you. And if we look at the SQL statement, it's saying it wants this SEL permit type equals to commercial. So I can do a lot of other little things in here, like contains COM update. Now view data, watch how long it'll take. It didn't go that far, but see, now I got commercial again. So that works. I'm trying to think of like residential, commercial. If I put an L update, I'm going to get both because residential and commercial both contain an L in it. So just be aware that when you're doing your filtering, you could be filtering and adding the other data in, and you might need to redefine or kind of make it a little bit more confined of what your query is. So I'm going to do commercial again. Update. So now we've got building permits and commercial permits, and I can do this issued. And I only have one thing to choose from here for a filter, but I can either define my own date range, or I can say last year, update. So now I'm saying I want all my BLDs that were issued last year that were commercial, and view data, and there it is. And there's not very many that were issued last year. I can change those to filter by final last year, or whatever. This is how I filter. But the filtering is this here, this console equals BLD issued for last year, and the permit type equals commercial. I can also add more items to this. So we've got people. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I want to know who the applicant is, and I want their full name and maybe their email address, and say update. So over here, applicant, it's telling me who the contact is. And if I view data, you can see now I have the applicant name and the applicant email, all for those issued commercial building permits last year. And if you're listening to what I'm saying, I probably sound like a 5th grade math teacher talking about how to do a word problem. It's little Johnny drives 13 blocks, turns left, goes 14 more blocks. How many blocks do you do? You're having to logically think about those things. And that's kind of what we're doing here is I'm basically saying I want all building permits that were issued last year that are a type of commercial, and I need their full name, applicant's name, and their email address. And then once I have this data, I can just export to XLS. That's going to generate my Excel spreadsheet with all that data. I now have an Excel spreadsheet with these column names. Let me zoom in here. These column names are the names that I called them in my data extractor. It's going to be in order by the permit number column. And I've got all my dates. I can easily come in here. I can highlight down here, way down here. It's going to tell me my averages. I can come over here and do a auto sum. And I can see what my total fees were for all commercial property projects that were issued last year. So I can have a balance due if I wanted to. I can do whatever I want with this data once I have it in Excel. And if you're not real proficient at Excel, there's tons of classes and Googles and YouTubes and stuff like that you can get into that can really help you get a lot of that data out of Excel. There's ways of doing grouping. So we give you the ability to put that into Excel, and then you can manipulate that data however else you need to, because there are times where the data extractor isn't going to manipulate the data as much as you probably want it to. The data extractor is going to give that data to you in those columns, but then you're going to have to take that and manipulate it a little bit more. So over here on the right-hand side, is there any questions up to that point on some of this? I'm gonna keep going on, but I just wanted to see if there's any questions. We are looking good on questions. So, can you filter fields that are blank? Only a couple of those. So when you're filtering like usually I think it's only on text fields where it is empty. But if I'm doing something like a date field, I can't filter that a blank on dates. It's only betweens. And money fields, of course, I can do equals, less than, greater than for that. But on text fields, you can. Even when I'm doing custom fields, I believe, even if it's like a date field is going to let me do a date range. Memo fields I can do is empty. Anything that has to do with text. Money fields are going to be greater than, less than, or equal to. Number fields are going to be the same way, greater than, less than, or equal to. Then the select list are going to be just like a text field, contains or is empty. If you run a report that is issued and finalized this year, is it smart enough to exclude the ones that were issued but not finalized in that time frame? So that's a good question. I would recommend on that would be 2 different data extractors, because if you're looking for if it was issued and finalized in that time range, that's what you're going to get. But if you're trying to do like the census report that says like that goes from like April 2nd to April 1st the next year, the weirdest date range ever, They usually want to know how many residential houses were issued in that date range, but then they also want to know how many houses were finalized in that date range. That's two data extractors, because you're going to have overlaps. You could have permits that were issued 3 years ago, but were finalized in that date range this last year. I hope that makes sense. I would look at those as two different data extractors when you're doing date ranges that would kind of overlap and conflict with each other. Otherwise, you're only going to get a very small subset of data. So if I'm looking for issued last year, and then I do add item, and I want finalized last year, probably going to view data. Look how much less data I got, because this final date is meeting last year. I'm actually saying, does that final date, was that in 2022? And was it issued in 2022? So if I come back over here to final, and I make that blank and view data, see how some of these don't even have dates. And some of these, yeah, so the only ones that they were all final, because I don't know how old your data is, Jesse, here in Enumclaw that I have on my system. But you know, it's trying to meet the query of parameters of, was it issued last year and was it finalized last year? And all of course, these are all under issued last year. But if I'm looking for finalized last year, then I want to get rid of this issued and then say finalized last year, because that's going to be a completely different set of data. This data, see, these are all 2021s. They were issued in 2021, but they all were finalized in 2022. So you're going to get different dates based on how you filter. And that's kind of why I look at, you filter after you get your columns. Because, you know, if I'm coming up here and take this filter out and take out this date final, and I can move, I'm going to use this little arrow over here. I'm going to move my date final up. And what I'm doing is I'm changing the order that these columns, I now have issued, final, fees, balance due, permit type, subtype. So if I'm viewing it, when I export the data, it's going to export these columns in this order. So you can see here, I've got issued, but I'm going back to 2016. So I've got issue dates, final dates, issue dates, final dates. So this would be another good way of looking at things that are expired. You know, so I can still add more items in here based on, I need to find the status out and maybe look at the expiration date. So I'm still only querying building permits here. So if I'm looking at the data now, I'm adding more columns. I've got when it expires, what the status is, you know, final dates. I can say, show me anything that maybe has a final date. Where's my final date? Let's see if this works. Cross my fingers here. Or no, I can't do empty here. That's where you'd have to export to Excel, and then start to filter by, you know, sorting by the column, by date, so you can look for maybe, you know, final dates that are empty. So here's all these empty dates, but you got a lot of these old permits, probably converted or whatever, that have no issue dates. But maybe they were never issued. We got it expired, voids, withdrawns. So maybe there's just going to be no dates, but they've expired. So you can spit this data out into an Excel spreadsheet and maybe kind of comb through it and look for some bad data and clean up some of your stuff in the system. You know, anything that's got balance dues that maybe are old. So you can see if you owe people money or if people owe you. So you have the ability to move these up and down. So I can, if I want that status, I just keep moving it up here. Maybe one day we'll make a little drag and drop, make this a little easier. Move this up, and that BLD is hidden. So now my status is going to be the second column. Excuse me. I had a bowl of cereal before this. So you can see the status of those permits as needed. The other type of data here that we can add. So we saw people. That's you choose by the type and choose which fields you want spit out. The next one is this other data. This is kind of like some custom configured data, and it's configured on the fly. So for every row that gets created, it goes out, finds that permit, and gets some of this data. So that could be like the primary address, the primary parcel, the primary contact, the full primary contact, the total valuation square feet, work description, the days in reviews, and the days elapsed. So if I just want the primary address, update, I can even add here other data, primary parcel, update, and view data. Now I'm going to see that address and that parcel for every single one of those records over here as we go across. So you can't sort by these. That's why you don't see a line underneath them. It's like these applicant email and name. You can't sort by those either. It's because when it generates this grid, it actually says, okay, go out and get this data, the primary's name, email, address, and parcel, and fill in my grid at the time it's building this grid. Can you add to the list of options in other data? At the moment, those are all just customs. What would you want in other data that's not already in other data? So there isn't any way to add to that. These are all, those are built-in options into the system because there isn't a way to definitely get that information. That's related data from other tables that we're getting that information from. I hope that makes sense. So these are all built right into Permitrix. So for some of you that use like we talked about, like the city of Cheney, their valuation is based on either the valuation the customer supplied with their application, or the valuation they calculated using the valuation calculator. It compares those two, and we create a whole nother field for doing valuation. So in that situation, you can't go in here and say, oh, go to other data and give me the total valuation and have that as part of, I'm getting this to be really big here. That's going to be part of the data over here. Well, that's getting it from the valuation calculator. It's not getting it from that valuation, the field that has been designated as the valuation of the permit. So that means you would have to do a custom data field to get that valuation, not this valuation. So I believe here, if I go to custom fields, building, is there a money valuation? I don't know if there is one. Oh, it'd usually be like a C, contractor bid right here, update. So that's a field, view data. So they're all blank, but if I go the other direction, because we added it later in life, I think here. So you can see some of these have data. So if I pull up, these are 2023s. Okay, why is that not working? All right, I didn't click it right. So most likely, because it's going to be for like these online commercial, general info, maybe building info. See, there's this contractor bid right here. That field is MON contractor bid. And a lot of times that'll be on the general info, maybe. If not there, it's going to be on these other fees, maybe not. That's the fee that they give. I believe for Enumclaw, it gets added into here for $3,000. But if I add something in here, I've added more valuation and come back to my report here, that $3,000 is still going to say $3,000 because this is based on that field over here on that general info 1, I believe. Nope, general info 2, online building. This 3,000 is still 3,000. That's what we're asking the customer to tell us the actual cost of construction. This valuation is completely different. We put it into here, but you can still add, manipulate this data all you want, because you can say, no, you're not doing $3,000 worth of work. I saw your plans, not happening. So you can go in and calculate it out and use that amount. So you need to be aware of how your data is stored and where, that's just what the customer supplied. That has nothing to do with the actual valuation. So, and every permit's different. Those consoles are different, and so forth. So those are some caveats or whatever you need to be aware of how your data is. And that contractor bid is something that we added later on. So when I'm viewing data here, these are older, these 2016 permits. When I pull that up, they don't even have online screens. They don't even have that field. That field isn't part of these old versions. I can go up here and look at that BLD 2016. This is the building permit from 2016, but now we're doing online permits and we've changed fields and we've changed things. So sometimes that's why these are blank. There's just no data there. And of course, you're not going to have that problem if you say, well, I want anything that was issued last year, update, view data. Now I'm going to probably get up. I got 2 here that don't have it. They were issued, but they're from 2021. So they're going to be older permits, but everybody else 0, 0, 0, 0. And those are all going to be 0 until you probably get into anything that was done online. And I'm not even sure if we're doing any of these online. And these are all commercial. Actually, they say commercial residential. Did I filter anything else out in there? Just last year. Those are probably done from this year that had that. So again, I'm not even getting the data I was expecting. And you have to realize, oh, I'm looking for last year. Those fields were being used this year, and I'm not even sure if some of that stuff's live yet. So, but be aware of your data and how it's stored. If you're not getting the data back you're expecting, and that's the biggest part of doing this. This last part here, it's kind of cool, this view map. What this is now, because I'm viewing this, you can see, I think I'm getting 100 items per page. So I've got 2 pages here. So I've got about 100 and probably 30, 40. I can export that to Excel. That's going to give me a better count. We don't do the count in Excel, but we know that this first column is going to be your headers. And then we scroll all the way down, we get down to 154. So that means I have 153, just subtract 1 from this. That's how many records we have, 153 records. So, and then over here, I thought it subtotaled these, but maybe it's not subtotaling. Gotta look into that. I thought these would anything with a number in them, it would subtotal down here at the bottom. So for the data extractor. So that looks like that might be a bug. it should have subtotaled those. So anything that had these like money values, it will subtotal the total of that column. So I thought it did that, but I'll have to look into that. But now that I know I have 150 of those, I can click on view map. And what it'll do is out of all of those permits that we just saw, if they have a GIS coordinates and a longitude and latitude, it's now going to jump me to the map with all of those data points on the map. So, and then I could take that and then come over here and print the map. Maybe. Okay, maybe not. Oh, there it went. There it is. Export. This takes this map with all of these data points and stuff on it and just how it looks right now. It sends it off to the cloud and it goes off to Esri and jumps through a bunch of hoops, and hopefully the server is not slow, and Esri will then turn it back. And you see down here in the bottom corner, this little thing is spinning. It's waiting for it to generate this PDF for me, and it'll turn into a link when it's done. And we wait for it. Sometimes it'll fail. Sometimes I have to click on export maybe another time. It'll time out if the server is taking too long to generate the report for us. And I have absolutely no control over that. I'm just sending it off to Esri, and Esri comes back and says, here's your map. Since I saw it taking a long time to kind of even click on that button, it's making me think that Esri is. See, it's gave me a little eh. A lot of times I do it again, it'll do it the second time. Every time you want to demo something, it doesn't work. Oh, there it is. Now I've got a little link here. And now I've got my map with all of those little dots all over it. So if I'm looking for something that I want to give to council or somebody, like, all of our code enforcement that, happened last month, you can kind of see where in your city all your code cases are coming from. Troubled maps, or maybe all your building permits. Where are people building last month? It's kind of nice to be able to dump that data out into a map. And of course, however I define that map, I can do overlays. I can change the map backgrounds. It will print on the PDF whatever it is on the screen.
Corey.
Yes.
If I can jump in, Paula has sent in a question. She's asking in the other data tab, how is the days in review used?
Okay. Good question. So we know, I'm going to do view data here so I can pull a permit up. Depending on your console and how things are set up. See here, even here in Enumclaw, we don't even have it turned on. And not everybody has it turned on. So if I switch connection, I know we do in Leavenworth. So on a building permit or any kind of permit, we can set up on the back end to use this review clock. And so here's one that it says Bitco software. You can see there's one that we messed with. So we can set up based on the console type. So building permit will be different than a land use permit or a code enforcement. Code enforcement, the review would be from open to closed, when it was open to when it was closed. A building permit, usually we say it's going to be, you can see we get this little to be decided date A and an applied date. So it's like, where do we start our clock? When are we on the clock, and when do we stop? So for this kind of permit, I don't have we do have a ready to issue, and that should be our date A. This review clock basically will say how many days in review has this been in from this date to this date. And you can see it's 603 because it hasn't got an end date. It looks like we've got something on the back end not working correctly. Let me fix that real quick. By console 2022. Date A should be ready to issue update. And that should be. There we go. See, if you make it work right, it works. So that date A is, we're basically saying for a building permit, it starts when it's applied and then it ends on date A. And we map date A to ready to issue because there is no ready to issue date. So we can see that that 5/11/22 is when it was ready to issue. You're no longer on a review clock once you're ready to issue that permit. So, and then we can see here that we had times that were stopped, started, stopped, and started. And there was 19 days elapsed. So we can see that there was 27 elapsed days. Those days are the time that the customer had it, and this is the amount of days that the city had it. So it was in 58 days in review and 27 days the customer had it from 2015. You know, you were on the clock from the 15th to the 25th. And then the 25th to the 16th, it was the customer had it and they brought it back. So, and then on the 20th, you stopped it again saying I'm done. And on the 28th, we started the clock again. So there was 8 days in between this one, and there was 19 days in between this one. And from this day to this day, there was a total of 58 days. And 27 of those were in the customer's hands. So most of you should have that turned on. But there's a possibility that you didn't. And also down here, you can see that we can have comments in here as well. So, and we can change those dates. We aren't sure if we have this function. Do we need to send an email? Yeah, you'd want to send that in. We probably didn't put this into the system until after we went live with you guys in Twin Falls. So yeah, you'd want to send something in and so you can have that turned on. That might be turned on in your land use. I'm not sure. We'd have to take a look. But sometimes, you know, we can turn it on any console. So a sign permit, building permits, land use permits. I know that this is important for land use, for knowing how long things have been on the clock. So because I just turned that on here, I should be able to go to reports. I'm in Leavenworth here. Go to data extractor. I'm going to add a new data extractor. And I'll just do AAA again here. And add item. I go other data, and that's where you got days in review. Add item, other data, days elapsed. And I'm going to do console, and I'm going to just say BLD again. And view data. So you can see days in review and days elapsed. So if you haven't used the clock, this is still going to give you just from the date that it was applied to the date it took to be ready to, you know, some of these you took forever. But go review clock here. Oh, it's because it's a voided permit. And you'll need to probably go in and filter by I don't want anything with a status of void. You know, adding data is going to tell you kind of what's going on here. I can move this up, view data. Now I'm looking at issued, finaled. So maybe I just want anything with a final date. You know, but this one for final, 1,300 days. That review clock, but you can see here it's got a to be decided, and that's an older permit, which means we didn't turn. There's no ready to issue date here. And sometimes that's just kind of how it happens. So we can, if I copy this over, update. Now, if I go to my review clock, now it was in review for 3 days. So that's that review clock. So those are those other items that are in the other data. So since I'm in this one, I'm gonna dump this one out and dump this one out. I'm gonna go back to Enumclaw real quick. Just because of the amount of data they have. So if I go back to this data extractor, give me a second here because I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. Might have been just easier to start a new one. Okay, so if I'm viewing this data here, you can see I've got different statuses: issued, final, issued, ready to issue, issued, approved. So I've got different statuses here. Well, what if I want to filter by like an issued status and a ready to issue status? So both of those. So if I go to status and I click on this and I say equals, contains, or empty, well, I could do issued or no. What I can do, let's do applied and do update. If I view data, I got nothing. All right, that wasn't a good choice for a status. Let's do issued. So now I've got issued, but what if I want final in there? Issued and final. Or I want status of issued and ready to issue. I can add an item again to status and say ready to issue. Update. So when I move this up here, you'll notice I now have 2. So I now have status issued and status ready to issue. When I view my data, you'll see now I have issued and I have ready to issue. I have both. So I need to add it again a second time. Same thing like over here for subtype. Maybe I just want issued and ready to issued, mechanical, and I want, am I not seeing? Oh, there it is, plumbing. I just want mechanical and plumbing. I would do the same thing for my subtypes. So I now add item, custom field, building. I'm down here to SEL subtype, and I'm going to say plumbing. So you'll see I have my subtype right there. So I've got subtype plumbing. I'll move it down a little bit. So this one just says subtype, and this says subtype plumbing. Well, if I'm looking at my SQL here, you're going to see where I'm going to say and subtype equals plumbing. So even though I'm going to have 2 columns there for subtype, view data, I still only get 1 column, but I'm only going to get my plumbing. So, but if I want my mechanical in there, I can click on this subtype and say mechanical. Mechanical update. If I can spell. So now I've got my mechanical and plumbings that all have a status of issued and ready to issue. So the way that works is this subtype, if you look at our SQL over here, you can see how we kind of have a parentheses in here for our order of operations. It says subtype equals mechanical or subtype equals plumbing. That's the same thing of our status up here. You know, we got order of operations up here. Our status equals issued or our status equals ready to issue. So when we add multiple ones, it creates that or for us. Everything else is an and in between. So my console is building and my status is equal to issued or ready to issue, and my status permit issued is greater than and less than this date range, and my subtype is equal to mechanical or my subtype is plumbing. That's how it reads it. It kind of reads like a math problem, this and this or this. So when you're putting each individual column in and you start filtering, we're saying console equals building, and these statuses are that, and it was issued last year, and these subtypes are that. That's how it's read. It's and, but if I'm adding multiples, it's or, these are ORed, like issued or ready to issue or final. I can add a whole new status here, equals final. So now I have that status. So I'm going to have status as issued or ready to issue or final. And if I view that data, you can see I have final, issued, or ready to issued. Does that make sense? Is there any question on that part of it? Because that's a key part of filtering this data out, is be able to say, I need multiple things. I need to be multiple statuses. I want to know, maybe I want to know all my voids and withdrawals, or issued and ready to issue, or applied and ready to issue, because those are things that are sitting on my desk that people have not picked up yet. So it's just a lot of different ways of getting that data out. I can't even imagine the permeations that, how many different permeations there are of getting data out of the system, especially since every one of our customers have different sets of data. And then inside there, your consoles have different sets of data as well. So you have to be aware of all of that. Now, most of the time, your consoles are going to be the same across the board. But when you start going to online permits, we're adding new screens, we're adding new fields, and then that gives you more options to filter and get data out of the system. So if we go in here to adding a new extractor, and I'm going to jump in here to like inspections, and I'm going to do a 2, just so it's at the top up here. You'll notice that when I go to add item now, this select field, standard permit fields. These are our standard permit fields, just like we had, and you're going to have these standard permit fields for every single one. So I can do status, add that item. Add another, I'll need to know the issue date. And I'm going to say last year update. So right now I'm viewing that data. I'm getting the same data as I would before, but because this is a data extractor on inspections, when I do add item, I have more fields down here. So you can see I have inspections, and then I have comments. So I can say, okay, show me the inspection ID, add the inspection description. Now, if I view that, you'll notice that over here on the left-hand side, I get the same permit number over and over and over. And that's because these are all the different inspections that are on that permit. So I've done nothing but just query just the building. And actually, I'm not even just doing building. I can turn this on to just do building. And I'm going to turn that off, and I'll get rid of I'll leave the status in here. I can get rid of the date issued. So I know this is all my issued permits last year, the inspection ID and the description. So now it's kind of cleaner. So I got my permit numbers, but you can notice, this is 0050 is multiple times in here. And these are all the individual inspections on there. So that literally is, if we look at our SQL here, it's not that big, but we're doing a link between the permit and the inspections. So remember, let me view data here. Let me pull one of these permits up. This permit up. If I go to inspections, right now, look at all these different inspections on that permit. So you can see that there's only one in here that even has a comment. The rest of them aren't even, there's no comments in here. So if I want to see those comments, so I'm literally just looking right now at this list, not when I get into comments, because now when I go into comments, I'll pick the one that has a comment. These are different records. So there's multiple records to each inspection. So that's what's going to happen if I go in and say, start giving me comment data. So it changes the query. So now I've got comments. I can say, well, here's the comment date. And I want that comment description, that comment, the actual comment. Here's the time of minutes. These are every single data field that we have in here. We've got complete flags, required flags, who created this record, the date the record was created. Then same thing down here, when it was created, who was the inspected by. But I'll just choose that comment, update. Now if I view data, now I can see there's the comment date. And if there was an actual comment on that, I would see it. So, but now our data is going to get a little bit more weird and wonky. So now I can comment dates. Well, I only want comment dates for last year, which is going to probably give me the same stuff, but it's not going to give me all the blank data anymore, because I literally said I only want comment dates for last year. So now I'm literally going to get just comments on inspections with that time range. So I'm only saying I want issued for last year. Well, I can get rid of the issued now because I don't need that. I'm looking at comment dates for last year for all building permits. So view data, there's all my comment dates with their comments across all permits. Now I can do more filtering. If I want just my plumbing permits, my mechanical permits, my, I'm literally getting every comment across every building permit from the beginning of time that had a comment last year. So if I need to break that down to only things that are still open or issued, I don't know. There's so many different ways of getting that data out and how you want it. And we talked about that at the user conference. How you ask the question is extremely important to get how the data you get out. Because a lot of times we'll get support requests saying, my boss asked me to find out how many permits we did last month. And I will go, well, is that finalized, issued, applied, created in the system? Oh, no, they just want plumbing permits. Okay, now we've narrowed that down. It's like issued. Oh, I don't know. Is it how many that just came in the door? How many that were paid and finalized? How much money you retrieved on those? There's just a million different questions that you have to answer to get the data you want out. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions up to that point? I know that people that during the conference, people were like, man, you make it look so easy. And the minute I go in there and start trying to do this, I can't make it work. I understand it because I understand this SQL and how I'm getting the data out of the database. That's the hardest part. But I think once you start getting in there and start playing with it, try to get the columns of the data you want first, then go in and try to start filtering it. Because when you view the data, you're going to see, okay, I see what I'm looking at. What do I want to export? What do I care about? What do I not care about? That stuff. The and the or, how do they differ? It's basically, it's a Boolean statement, basically to say, I was trying to think of how to describe that the other night. Let's look at it from a standpoint of cooking. If I give you a recipe for lasagna, sometimes it would be use ricotta cheese or regular cottage cheese for your inside of your lasagna. That's an or. I'm using this one or that one. But then somebody else is going to come along with a recipe going, oh, no, use ricotta cheese and regular cottage cheese. So you're going to put both of those into your mixture for your lasagna, where the other recipe says use one or the other. So the same concept of when you're doing that, the and is always the and is going to be the standard. This is building and this, this comment date is last year. It has to meet the criteria. The console is a BLD and the comment date is last year. But if I go in here to add item and see console ID, SGN, update. Now when I'm just moving this up to be next to it, so it kind of makes sense. I'm now saying the console is either a BLD console or it's a SGN console. It's this or this. So when I'm doing the same item, they will be an or. And it's like this one or this one or this one. So now if I view my data, I will probably see in here building permits. And if you guys have sign permits, I don't know if you do over there, but that's where that field, this is where the or comes in. If I'm doing the same field over and over and over in my query here. So I could do sometimes though people will do, I want a comment date, add item, comment date. And I say today forward. Well, that's an or. This is a comment date last year, or it has a comment date from today or forward. I'm still going to get the same amount of data. It's not going to, because there is no today forward. This is an or, this one or that one. This still isn't going to matter. I could say 1/1/2021 to 1/12/31/2021. So that's going to be last year, 2022, and this. Oh, I didn't do the right thing, did I? Oh, gotta go here. 1/1/2021. 1/1. There we go. So my comment date is last year. I don't have like previous year to last year. So it's going to either be this or this. And if I view my data, I'm going to see 2021's in here, 2022's in here, because I've got this or that. So I can get some really weird date ranges in here. I can say I want January 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2021. And then let's do that. Let's do a weird one here. So this one would be 1/31/2021. But this one, instead of last year, I'm going to say 1/1/2021. Oh my Lord. Or 2022 to 1/2022. 31. So I'm basically saying I want last January's of 2020, January 2022 and January 2021, all comments. And there's all my data. And he's going to give me all my data for between 2021s and 2022s. So, and it's probably going to be, there's all my 2022s. So you can do some weird things there. Does that I hope that makes sense. I know some of this can get a little complex, but it's hard for me to kind of develop it to make it easier because I see this and I know that probably 90% of you, 95% of you probably look at that and go, That's Greek. Makes no sense. And this is just basically how I'm querying the database. I'm building this SQL statement on the fly from the data that you put in here. So just remember, we can to get the data out in a clean format that maybe you can give to somebody that looks good. You can rename these headers up here. Across the board, all of them, except for like the people. I think you're stuck with it because of the way that the database uses those columns to know what data to get out of the system. You can export that data to Excel. It's going to give you an Excel spreadsheet. And then sometimes you may need to come into here and actually clean it up and maybe even get better data out of your Excel spreadsheet. So remember, we were talking about like this says plumbing, mechanical, electrical. Let's see here, assumed inspection, homeowner. Okay, I got a lot of OKs in here. But in these comments, if I'm looking for things that say electrical in them, I can filter and say, just show me anything that has electrical or plumbing. There says discuss plumbing. That one says, I know I got a couple that say plumbing. So in this comment here, I can say contains plumbing update. So now when I view my data, here's two. Discuss plumbing options, plumbing and mechanical. So I now have two items in my list. So I got all my data that had the word plumbing in the comment. So otherwise I can come back over here, get rid of that, make that back to equals and say update. And now I get all my data back again. So if you're looking for, I've used that a lot where in work descriptions, I'll search for things that have fire in the work description. Something like that.
Hey, Corey, Jessie had a question. She says, if you don't have a specific date range as a filter, does the report automatically update with the new permits when you export it?
Yes. So yes. So this is basically a data extractor is literally a snapshot in time. So, and I plan on I have it on my little to-do list, is to be able to have these data extractors that you have as private show up under here, so you can click on them and it'll just automatically generate that Excel spreadsheet. Because something like this extractor that I've created here, this is based on issued for last year. Well, if I wanted to do issued for last month, and I want that to be a report that I run monthly, I can set that all up in here, get my columns, get it all nice, and it's going to automatically just, so we're in November, that would run for October. When we're in December, that will run for all the data that date range is for October. So if I ran it November, it'll be October. December, we'll do November. January, we'll do December's of the previous year. So when we're choosing these date ranges, all of these date ranges that we have in here. Now, if I do a custom date range, it'll always be that custom date range. So if I'm doing January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, and I literally put that in there, it'll always run the same report with the same data. But if I choose a date range saying last month, so you can see here it fills in 10/1 to 10/31. Well, that's letting me know how it calculated that out. But we're just saving in the database, we're saving last month. So if I was to go pull this up again to look at it in December, this would say January 1st to January 30th, or not January, November 1st to November 30th. That's what it'll say if I go in and edit it, but it's saved as last month. So I hope that makes sense. So the minute I close this out and I go back in, and I click on view data, it's going to show me last month. Of course, I've got nothing in here for last month issued. So that's why I always choose last year, but I do this year. That'll always be this year's data, always. So if I do last year, I've got other things in here, quarters, previous quarters, first quarter, second quarter. So if I go last year, it's always going to be last year's data. So I hope that makes sense. It just kind of makes it easier for you, so you don't have to go in and try to refilter every time. So, and of course, the other thing is once you have that data extractor in here, I can clone it. And if I have a private one and somebody wants mine, I can clone it and not make it private. And so then they can, or I can turn my private off, let them clone it, and then turn it back on so it's mine. You can just go in here and make it private. Once it's private, you can see here, it shows up in bold, and it should say over here that it's a private report by me, and it was created by me on that date. So anything that's in bold will be a private report, my private report. So, uncheck that. But I can take that and clone this data extractor and say, last month. Okay, so it now has created it and taken me into here. So it literally is now AA2. It's cloned it. And so when I go in to edit that, I can go in here and change this to say date issued. I said last year, but let's do, year to date or something. My data is going to be empty because I know I don't have any data in there, but this is actually update. So that's my year to date. Here's my test one. This is one you would probably put last year. So that's last year's. This is year to date. I took the same one, the same data extractor. They just have a different date range. That's year to date. This one over here is last year. They're the same extractor. I cloned it, but I've just changed my date ranges. So next time I want to run it, I just go in there and click view. And view my data or export my XLS and Excel. No data for my current year. I can just export it or view that data. Like, oh, okay. If I want to view the map, I can view the map. It's going to gather that information, jump me over to the GIS and show all that stuff on the map, and I can print it and be done. So try to make it to where it's easy for you to go in. You've set those filters up, and you can just generate that really quickly by going into viewing it, either mapping it, exporting it, or just viewing that data. So, and I've seen a lot of different stuff. I'm in Enumclaws here, so we got all these different stuff. We got building planning permits 2017, permit reviews, revenue. I guess that's probably what that REV is. But you've got business license stuff, census. Here's some census report, chart of accounts. Some code enforcement stuff here. And I would imagine you probably have some things in here that are probably have come up as public records requests. And somebody's gone in here and created, or we might have helped or whatever, but created some public records requests. Now, as an administrator, I'm logged into the system. I see everybody's permits, or there's these data extractors. And I would recommend, if the more people go in here and put them in, you're going to get a lot of junk. We got this revenue one. If I look at it, there's 3 things in here. It was like, was this just a quick and dirty report? Somebody was looking for some stuff here. So the question is it needed anymore? You can see that who created these in the system. And of course, I just ran it. But one of the things I do is I click on this last run. Well, here's 2 reports that were created that have never actually been run. Nobody's actually done anything. So, and I can look at it 2020 and 2022. Probably started and then got distracted. and then that was it. It's been sitting there. And to me, I would go in, delete. I mean, you can always recreate them, but these were last time this was actually this SFR report was done, it was in 2018. I'm assuming that these 2018s, 2019s, 2020s, they're not used. They were created, maybe a one-time deal. And that would be up to somebody to go in. That's why we have administrators can go in and see all reports. Chris created this one on 2/7/2018, probably looked at it, got the data he wanted, and never went in there again. You can just click them and delete them. I'm in my production environment, Jesse, so I'm not deleting these out of your system right now. So, Jesse's probably like, no, you're deleting our data. But there's, it can get messy after a while, but you can see how many of these nobody's touched them or run them. So if I go to this mech one and click on it, and if I view data, there's nothing in here. It's weird. There's no columns in that one, but now it'll show this mech on 11/7/2023. So these are all the ones that I've run today. So, and so it changes that last run date so you can kind of see what's being used and what's not being used. Any questions on any of that? We're an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes into this. I thought I would go quicker. Does everybody know how to do data extractor and you're experts? I'm going to get a lot of thumbs up, right? So that's the data extractor. It's basic, it's simple. I do want to, if everybody's still, Kathy, I get it. I do have something that I just pushed out a couple nights ago. If everybody wants to give me a couple minutes, and I'll show you something that I added into permit tracks. And I don't know if Susan is on this meeting today, but she might get upset with me. I changed something. So I'm going to go to the statistics page, and I'm in Enumclaw here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to log out, and I'm going to go to Enumclaw. I'm going to go to your live environment. So I can show this working in a live environment. So under statistics, everybody is probably aware of, I go to Enumclaw, Citizens Connect. So this is a Citizens Connect for Enumclaw. This map right here is a map of active permits. So what is an active permit? Maybe that can be, okay. So a lot of people are like going, okay, what's an active permit? We used to have active permits in Citizens Connect that showed if based on statuses, and it was kind of a weird. So I changed the way permit tracks defines what an active permit is. And if we go over here to statistics, we hover, we can see that the city of Enumclaw right now has 364 active permits across the board. And what that is, if there is no final date and it has not expired. So I believe I need to, I don't know if I changed this or not, but if there is no expiration date, I believe it still is considered active. So but this one might not. So in Citizens Connect, that sure looks like that could be about 364, I guess. So if I do building, those are my active building permits. So if I come over here, you can see my building says 3, but this is this month. I can do to date, reload stats, and building, reload. All right. So now I have 175 active permits, which is 175 active building permits. So, which is about probably what that is. And if there are any somewhere else in the world. Nope, we're looking good. So this active permits has been changed to say if there is no final date and it has not expired, it's considered active. So if I go to search now, I've created this little button over here that says view active permits, and it says no final date and has not expired. So if I click on that, my search screen now is going to show me everything that would be considered an active permit. So I can then also take that and spit it out to an Excel spreadsheet. So I have everything in here that's considered an active permit. And it's because those are all going to have up here on this date. It has no final date. It's empty all the way down, and it hasn't expired. So those two dates, that's the only thing that I'm considering an active permit. So I can, on my search screen, filter this and say, well, I just want building permits, active permits. These are just my active building permits. See, I have less data now. Or I can say, well, code enforcement, let's see. Code enforcement, again, they have no final dates and they haven't expired. So this is where I changed my query to be, even if it's blank, it shows up. So these are all my active code enforcement, even though that says closed right here. Got a status of closed, but if we look at our general information, it's got a closed date, and that means it should have a final date. Oh, it does have a final. Why is it showing up? It should not do that. Well, maybe I have to do this. Search, active. No, now it shows up wrong. Okay, that's it. I know you can filter it here. So I think you have to do a search and then say, give me my active out of that. So.
Hey, Corey, Jessie from Enumclaw had a question. She wants to know the best way to use the data extractor to find all of the business license types except for two. Would she have to add those each individually, the license type she wants to see?
Yes, because there isn't a way to exclude data. You'd have to do to me, if it's too much at that point, I would export the data to Excel and then sort that column and then get rid of the data you don't want. I know it's like 2 or 3 more steps, but there isn't a way like in the report creator where we can exclude data in the data extractor. The data extractor, you'd have to, if there's 10 different types and you want only 8 of them, you'd have to put 8, where it's this or this or this. But yeah, there's no way to say not equal to and not equal to, or something like that. It would make the data extract even more complex. You could do that on using contains if it works. I mean, it's querying data. So if the data is, depending on the data, you could use contains. But it's still, if you do it multiple times, contains, because you could do that for like 3 or 4 things. If you had like, open van, closed van. Well, I want van, contains van. You want both of those. You could do that. Something like that. You could. But just remember, the more you use contains, especially the contains will take a long time on things like work descriptions. If there's a lot of data and we're joining tables, it can really slow it down. So, but yeah, I wanted to point that out, that I put that in the system this weekend and pushed it out as this new button. You just say, click on that, and you're going to see all your active permits. And this is going to, if I just click on that, that's going to give me the same list as what shows up out on here, most likely. So the thing that the ones that are going to show up on this here are going to be the ones that have this little world icon over here to tell me that it's got an actual GIS location. So if it doesn't have a little world over here, it will not show up on the Citizens Connect map because it doesn't have a place to put it on a map. So, other than that, does anybody have any questions? Data Extractor? Anything related? Everybody good? Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Mona. My birthday, I had to get up early. Yeah, everybody can say happy birthday. Today I turned 55. I'm officially a senior citizen, I think, right? So, all right. Anybody have any other questions, comments, suggestions for future webinar requests? Casey was asking if there was something that senior discounts. I know. Me and Dad will go to McDonald's and get our senior coffees. The special menu. I love it. Yeah, Casey. I think Casey, we are recording this, right? Is Casey still around?
I am still around.
Okay.
My top left corner shows that you started recording, and it does have the red dot. So
Oh
as
yeah,
far
it
as I'm
does say.
aware, we're recording.
Yeah. So when this is done, maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of save this and this video, and we'll push it out and send everybody a link to it. So if you guys want to watch it again, the excitement of Data Extractor, you can watch it as many times as you want. Thanks, Cindy. ARP. They've been sending me stuff for about 5 years. I refuse. Refuse.